Man, I friggin' love Puyo Puyo. It's a tile-matching puzzle game series with a heck of a learning curve where it's really interesting to me to see what I have left to learn. Which is a lot. Like a ton. Like an absolute truckload. The series is becoming more popular, but a lot of people still don't know the details and just how many Puyo games there are. Don't get me wrong, I'm no expert, and there are even a lot of Puyo games I'm going to leave out of this video because I don't have easy access to them, or I don't find them interesting, or they're out of the scope of it. This is mostly just about the start of Puyo. I'll mostly be talking about a few games we have easy access to in the West, or are at least fan-translated. This will be a primer, and I'll let you know what I think of each game and my hopes for the future of the series as we go along. With that out of the way, let's go. Let's start at the beginning. No, not there. The actual beginning. Sorcery Saga is a series of first-person dungeon-crawling RPGs developed and published by a company called Compile. Bet you didn't see that one coming. These are also extremely out of the scope of the video, but they are notable for being the origin of many characters from Puyo and their personalities, like Arl and Shizo. Unlike the very child-friendly Puyo series, Sorcery Saga could get a bit gruesome and dark. It's an interesting contrast. Puyo is actually a spin-off of the series, although it far outlasted Sorcery Saga, and Sorcery Saga is functionally dead now. But no, we're going to talk about the title drop title with the title that is self-titled Puyo Puyo. Made and published by Compile once again, it's on the MSX2, and it's archaic as heck. Extremely simple graphics, extremely simple music. Masamitsu Mu Nitani is credited as the creator of Puyo Puyo. He was inspired by Dr. Mario and Tetris and wanted to create his own tile-matching video game, the Mad Lad. Let me pull a fast one on you though, and we're going to toss this over to the arcade version of Puyo Puyo, made in collaboration with Sega. Match 4 Puyo together by color and they'll pop, and you'll toss a garbage Puyo at your opponent to atone for its sins. These garbage Puyo can't be popped traditionally and can only be popped when Puyo are popped near it. But the real meat of Puyo is combos. If you can break 4 Puyo and use the resulting cascade to break another 4 Puyo, and so on and so forth, you'll send exponential waves of garbage Puyo at your opponent. You do this because once you or your opponent can't output a Puyo out of their chute, they or you lose, and much anger and merriment is had by all. As it is an arcade game, there's a fair amount of quarter muncher design going on. Nothing too cheap compared to other arcade games in my opinion. But the biggest thing is that this is the hardest default mode of a Puyo game I've ever played. Basically the hardest normal mode. It's also the most epic. I game over 30 times in my initial playthrough. In between Puyo battles, you get a little intro cinematic for the next character you'll fight. These range from charming, to funny, to downright amazing. Let me show you a few of my favorites here.
Go!
I respect this as the first real start where Puyo began getting popular, but it's not what you should play first as a newcomer. Battles are decided to a certain degree by who can get off a combo first, since there's no way to stop garbage Puyo coming at you. I absolutely hate that you can't turn Puyo in single columns as a modern veteran. And also you can only turn Puyo in one direction, whereas in later versions you can turn Puyo left or right. It's got that same kind of feel as Sonic 1 on the Genesis, lacking later features that define so much of what makes Puyo fun to play. There is a sort of remastered release of this arcade title on Nintendo Switch by way of Sega Ages. I deliberately chose not to go over this title in detail because I wanted to look at the retro start of Puyo, and this title has improvements from the arcade release. I still think you should look elsewhere first for your first Puyo game, but it's kinda cool as a re-release. Historically interesting for both releases, but let's move on. Also Sega? Sega? Where the fuck are my Sega Ages games on PC? Seriously, these are awesome. These should not just be on Nintendo Switch. I would buy these on Steam in a goddamn heartbeat. So, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Not that one. Mean Bean Machine and Kirby's Avalanche released on the Genesis and SNES respectively. These are localized versions of the game you just saw, and just about the first Puyo games most people outside of Japan saw. You see, in the early days of the franchise, Sega and Nintendo felt that people outside of Asia wouldn't really like or recognize Puyo characters, so instead we got these localized versions. Like happened to so many other games coming out of Japan where they were localized for the region that they were put into. I don't like Mean Bean Machine. This is by far the most popular release that's widely known on the Western internet, partially popularized by memes nowadays. It's still Puyo Puyo 1 rule set, I'll call it, and you still can't rotate in single columns or fight back against garbage. Mean Bean Machine actually feels worse than Kirby's Avalanche in my opinion. I find at the latest part of the story mode that the speed and inaccuracy of the controls means that mistakes are common and Puyo will land where you don't mean them to. Not that Kirby's Avalanche is too different in this regard. And they both feel worse to play than the arcade Puyo Puyo games.
Midnight!
I also don't like these games to a certain degree because I feel like they really kneecapped Puyo's ability to receive ports and translations later in its lifespan. People who played Puyo Puyo Tetris, a later popular release, were mostly confused about the Puyo characters because they had extremely little exposure to them, and Puyo itself as a series confused them. The story mode, and the feel of the story modes, is very fun though. Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog is the weirdest cartoon base for a game ever. Maybe I'd like it better if it was based on Sonic Sadam, thinking about it. As a Sonic fan, I find Sonic Sadam infinitely more interesting than Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog. But that's all subjective. And on the other hand, this is the most sassy and pissed off Kirby I've ever seen, and very fun to watch. If there's one thing I do like, it's the absolutely menacing nature of DDD as the final boss of Avalanche. The earth-shaking nature of his Puyo hitting the ground really drives home that this is the ultimate final battle. It's gimmicky as heck and I love it. I actually wish we got more flavor like this in the games. Later on I'll go more in depth on this point, but I really want more gimmicks in Puyo Puyo. Robotnik as the final boss of Mean Bean Machine is kind of fun, just about as hard but not as much personality. Both these were played on normal mode, by the way. He's not so tough. I'm decent at Puyo myself, decent enough to go through normal difficulty story modes for the games at least. You'll have to look elsewhere for high-level play, but high-level play of Puyo Puyo is a spectacle. It's not something I'm going to talk about much since I'm more interested in the single player of the games right now, but Puyo Puyo is a bona fide esport in certain areas, and people can pull off crazy combos and fights. And let's talk about the game that makes that possible. The one, the only, Puyo Puyo 2! Or Puyo Puyo Su as it's known in Japan, which is a pun in their language, because of course it is. I'll be taking a look at the fan-translated version of this game on the Super Famicom. You can currently find an untranslated version on the SNES Online service on Nintendo Switch. Which is weird, by the way. But hey, whatever. More Puyo is cool. If weird. This might be my favorite Puyo game so far just for the single player. As I've been alluding to, this is really where the series got amazing mechanically. Kinda like Sonic 2, huh? You can flip Puyo around in a single column, and we've got offsetting now. This is the mechanic that makes Puyo a fighting game. If you've got garbage Puyo coming your way, you can perform a combo and cancel it out. Or, you can send a wave of garbage Puyo at your opponent if you overcome their wave enough with your own combo. I love the story mode of this game, beating characters and rising through tower sections to get to the very top. Dialogue is funny and interesting and charming, but quick to get out of the way for the real fun. You can rebind the controls. Let me repeat that! On a Super Famicom/SNES game, you can rebind the controls. Completely. There's still modern games where you can't do that. In the latest version of Puyo Puyo, you can only select styles of controls. So if you don't like any of the styles for your purpose, you're out of luck without third-party options. Like me. The graphics are so sharp, the music is nice and bouncy and keeps the action flowing, and there's a decent, if minimal, amount of gimmick to the fights themselves. Check out Nahoho here, who builds in towers on the sides of the screen as his AI dictates. This type of characterization of strategy being tied to a character is something I'd love to see more as well. There's many strategies you can employ in Puyo, like sandwiches, stairs, GTR. These are very fun names, by the way. I wish more AI were programmed to use these strategies per character to make fighting each character memorable. There's nothing else I have to criticize about Puyo Puyo Sun. It's a fantastic game, and the only thing to really criticize is that this doesn't have as wide of a release as it deserves. We never got an English translated Puyo Puyo 2 SNES in the States, and it's only untranslated and available on the original release or on Nintendo Switch Online. I want this as a standalone release. I want it on Steam. I'd love for Sega to either translate it themselves or to pay the fan translators, if at all possible, for their translation. This I know is really naive for translation purposes, but it's what I currently hope for. I want to play this game, I want to own this game, in an English variant. There is the arcade version of Puyo Puyo 2 that is coming out by way of Sega Ages, and I look forward to playing that and seeing what the differences are. Sega, seriously though, put all of that on PC, please. Last but not least, let's talk about Puyo Puyo 3, or Puyo Puyo Sun, which is a pun on the word sun, son, and 3 in Japan. Because of course it is. This release was actually pretty broad as far as hardware platforms, but confined only to Japan. Coming out on PC, Sega Saturn, PS1, N64, Game Boy Color, and in the arcade. Phew! I'll be checking out a fan translation of the PC version. This was originally intended for Windows 95, but a group of modders has kept it fairly playable and compatible with modern hardware. This version of the game adds on the Sun Puyo, which drop after you've performed a combo and can't add on to the power of combos themselves. It's almost odd to me, but this is the only really new thing to this game. It's an interesting gimmick, but it feels like it should be a one-off level in a story mode, not having an entire game based around it. I also kind of dislike it because the Sun Puyo have a habit of getting in the way of your actual combos. God damn it. The options menu is really in-depth this time around, and allows you to tweak the most features that I've seen in a Puyo game, including whether offsetting is on or off, how big Puyo chains need to be to occur, how many Puyo need to be together in order to pop. A lot of it is superfluous, I think, but still really cool to see if anybody wants to mess around with it. Also worth noting that the gameplay options apply only to Versus mode, and can't change Story mode, unfortunately. The single player is still good, multiple easily selectable and visible difficulty story modes. In the past, such as on Kirby's Avalance, selecting hard would only throw you ahead some levels, but it's still the same game with either difficulty. Whereas here, selecting a difficulty will give you different cutscenes and the entire campaign will be that difficulty you selected. I'd almost say the most remarkable thing about this release is how charming all of the cutscenes are, including especially the beginning intro to the game. Everything is very animated and lively. Puyo Puyo 2 has its charm, but this is on another level for me. I can't help but grin at some of the silly hijinks that occur in the lead up to the battles. The beach theme is pushed to great effect throughout, and it's fun to see everybody in beach attire. Oh heck yeah! Jam it out, Satan! Oh yeah, Satan. So this character here is known as Satan in the retro Puyo games, but the localization has gone through great trouble to call him the Dark Prince in modern releases. Which is a hilariously small difference and something I choose to ignore most of the time, since playing a nice board game of Satan sounds like a great thing to do on a Saturday. The characters of Puyo are really one note if I'm being honest with you, but they work for the purpose. Just a quick little cutscene, 2 or 3 lines of dialogue, and they're gone. They aren't meant for extremely long stories or long cutscenes, and that would be extremely silly if a game was made with these one-note personalities that tried to make them interesting. Extremely silly indeed. I'm glad that never happened. Ever. And I'm glad these cutscenes didn't get dragged out into 20-minute long slogs. Ever. The backgrounds of the battles are very garish in my opinion. Charming, but garish along a design standpoint. The only thing that really holds back my opinion is how hard it is to get a hold of and the lack of a re-release. Compile was bought by Sega soon after this game, and it seems to be considered abandonware and freely distributable by fans. This game runs on Windows 10 miraculously, granted I needed to patch in a windowed mode feature from third-party software. I'd love to see this game get polished up and re-released, although an odd version of Puyo, it obviously had a lot of heart put into the details. I think you could make a good trilogy re-release out of the main Puyo games I showed today, or at least give Puyo Sun the Sega Ages treatment. If you want to pick up Puyo nowadays, my personal recommendation is to either pick up Puyo Puyo Tetris or Puyo Puyo Champions. Yeah, I know, kinda weird to recommend the games that the video isn't even on, but they are the widest re-releases at the moment. Puyo Puyo Tetris is more fully featured with more modes to mess around with, but Champions has better balancing and also has a really good tutorial mode for learning the game. On the future of the series, I just want stronger single-player modes with more to think about and do. Gimmicks per battle, more interesting AI, less reliance on speed as a difficulty increase, and instead an increase in AI intelligence as you go along. Perhaps some kind of outside-of-battle management, like talking to characters in a visual novel format. You could avoid a battle with the right dialogue options, or make a character mad before a battle and more likely to make mistakes. A hub world would be neat to see, I think. Puyo games, as far as I know, have always taken place just in either menus or the Puyo battle screen. I like playing as character and moving around, so that's just my bias coming into play. Maybe make a Puyo RPG or management game of sorts with Puyo puzzle play as the core loop, but also having things to do outside of that. Sadly though, Puyo feels like it's on the fringe of becoming a mobile game only series. Releases of late have been steady, but I'm unsure of how good the sales really are. I love the series in general, but I'm worried about its future. Buying the games to support it is a thing we can do, but Sega needs to figure out how to make them profitable broadly. I hope they can figure that out without losing the soul of the series. And I hope more future Puyo games are single-player instead of just multiplayer. They are veering very, very closely to just being multiplayer, partly due to the esports scene that's actually going pretty nicely in Japan. Shoutouts to the fans at PuyoNexus.com for creating a neat little fandom spot for the game and their efforts to translate all the Puyo games that never got officially translated. I especially recommend grabbing this abandonware version of Puyo Puyo Sun there. And especially special thanks for some of the translations that I've used throughout this video, including Puyo Puyo Sun and Puyo Puyo Sun. There are way more Puyo games out there I could talk about if people wanted me to, so let me know in the comments if you want to see more and which games in particular you want to see. Give me a like and subscribe to support the channel, maybe. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time. Later, everybody.